This woman in a black turtleneck convinced the world she had changed medicine forever, using a machine that didn't actually work. And I mean, the whole world believed her. Presidents, generals, billionaires, the most respected names in business sat on her board and nodded along. They looked at this college dropout in her early 20s with the deep voice and the Steve Jobs wardrobe and thought, yes, this is the genius who is going to revolutionize healthcare. Hand her the money. So today we are going to break down exactly how Elizabeth Holmes built a $9 billion company called Theranos on a lie. How she convinced the smartest people in the room that a broken machine was a miracle, and what the warning signs were that almost everybody ignored. And I promise, even if you know nothing about medicine or startups, you are going to understand every piece of this. Let's start with Elizabeth herself. Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford at 19 with one giant idea. She was terrified of needles, and she said she wanted to build a machine that could run hundreds of medical tests from a single tiny drop of blood, just a finger prick, instead of the big, scary vials they take at the doctor's office. It was a beautiful idea. If it worked, it could change everything. She started a company called Theranos to build it. And she built an image to go with it. She wore black turtlenecks every single day, exactly like Steve Jobs. She spoke in a deep, slow voice that former colleagues say was not even her natural voice. She talked about changing the world and saving lives in every interview. She put together a board of directors stacked with famous names, former secretaries of state, generals, powerful senators. On paper, she looked unstoppable. And here is where Sketch, our suspicious stick figure detective, leans in. Because Sketch has seen this move before. When someone copies the costume of a famous genius, lowers their voice to sound more serious, and surrounds themselves with impressive names instead of impressive results, that is worth a second look. None of those famous board members were doctors or blood testing scientists. They were there to make the company look trustworthy. The turtleneck, the voice, the powerful friends, all of it was building an image, and that image was doing a lot of heavy lifting. But before we get to the fraud, you need to understand what Theranos actually claimed to have, because that is the whole trick. Theranos said it had invented a machine, which it eventually called the Edison, that could sit in your local pharmacy. You would come in, they would prick your finger, take one tiny drop of blood, and that little machine would run dozens or even hundreds of tests on it. Cholesterol, diabetes, infections, all of it. Fast and cheap and painless. They signed a huge deal to put these machines inside Walgreens stores, so regular people would actually use them to make real health decisions. That is the key thing. Real patients were going to get real results from this machine and then make real decisions about their health and their medicine based on what it told them. But here is where the story falls apart. Because the machine did not work. It never really worked. The Edison was unreliable. It gave wrong results. A single drop of blood is actually a terrible amount to work with because it is too small and gets contaminated easily, which is exactly why labs take those big vials in the first place. The science just was not there, and the engineers inside the company knew it. So what did Theranos do? This is the part where Sketch starts pointing aggressively. When the Edison could not do the job, Theranos secretly ran the blood tests on normal commercial machines. The same big standard machines made by other companies that every regular lab already used. So a patient would give that one special finger prick drop, believing it was being analyzed by this revolutionary invention, when really, behind the curtain, the company was often watering the blood down to make it work and running it through an ordinary machine bought from a competitor. Here is the simplest way to think about it. Imagine a restaurant that brags it has a magical robot chef that cooks gourmet meals in seconds. People line up, they pay a fortune, they are so excited to taste the future. But behind the kitchen door, there is no robot. There's just a tired guy microwaving frozen dinners and plating them up fast. The customers think they are eating a miracle. They are actually eating something worse than what they would get anywhere else, dressed up as magic. That is what Theranos was doing. Except this was not dinner. This was people's blood. Real patients got results that were flat out wrong. Some were told they might be having a miscarriage when they were not. Some got incorrect readings about serious conditions. People made health decisions based on numbers from a company that knew its technology did not work. Now Sketch wants to know, how did this stay hidden for so long? And the answer is fear and secrecy. Inside Theranos, everything was a secret. Employees were split into teams that were not allowed to talk to each other. People who raised concerns were pushed out, threatened with lawsuits, and followed by lawyers. Holmes hired one of the most aggressive law firms in the country to keep people quiet. So the company looked confident and revolutionary on the outside, while on the inside, the people who knew the truth were too scared to speak. But a few of them did speak, and that is what brought it down. A young employee named Tyler Schultz, who happened to be the grandson of one of those famous board members, saw what was happening and was horrified. He became a whistleblower. He, along with other former employees, took their concerns to a journalist named John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal. In 2015, Carreyrou published an investigation revealing that the technology did not work and that Theranos was running tests on other companies' machines. Once that story was out, the illusion cracked fast. Regulators inspected the labs and were alarmed by what they found. The Walgreens deal fell apart. The $9 billion valuation evaporated. By 2018, Theranos shut down completely. The company that was going to change medicine was gone. And then came the consequences. Elizabeth Holmes and her business partner and former boyfriend, Sunny Balwani, were charged with fraud. In early 2022, after a long trial, Holmes was convicted on multiple counts of defrauding investors. In late 2022, she was sentenced to more than 11 years in prison. Balwani was convicted too and got an even longer sentence. The woman in the turtleneck who said she was going to save lives ended up convicted of lying to the people who trusted her with their money and their health. So what do you actually take from this? Because this is not just a wild Silicon Valley story. The first lesson is that a great story is not the same as a working product. Holmes was an incredible storyteller. She sold a dream so beautiful that smart, powerful people did not want to look too closely at whether it was real. When the vision is exciting enough, people stop asking for proof. Always ask to see the thing actually work. The second lesson is about impressive names. That board full of famous generals and politicians made Theranos look legitimate, but not one of them could actually evaluate the science. Borrowed credibility is not the same as real credibility. Just because important people are involved does not mean important people checked. Sketch has been keeping his usual list of red flags, and here is what is on it. A founder who cares more about looking like a genius than showing one. A company obsessed with secrecy, where teams cannot talk to each other and critics get threatened. Big, famous names on the board, but none of them experts in what the company actually does. And a revolutionary product that nobody outside the company is ever allowed to independently test. When you see those things, you do not need a medical degree to feel that something is off. And the wild part is, some people did notice. Real scientists raised doubts for years about whether the technology was even possible. But the hype was so strong, and Holmes was so convincing, that the doubters got brushed aside as people who just did not get the vision. That is how these things survive. The fraud is not only in the technology. It is in the excitement that makes everyone afraid to be the one who says, "Wait, does this actually work?" If you made it this far, you went from knowing nothing about Theranos to understanding exactly how a $9 billion company was built on a machine that did not function, and how a handful of brave people brought it down. That is the kind of context that actually protects you. Now, Sketch wants to know which scam we should investigate next. Drop it in the comments because there are plenty, and some are even stranger than this one. And if you do not want to get fooled by the next world-changing genius with no working product, subscribing is a smart move, because we are going to keep breaking these down until the scams run out. Which, let's be honest, is probably never.